I'm a big believer in bars becoming creative spaces, but also there have already been event spaces, especially if you're a bar that doesn't have a kitchen. Here with Adonis, FAO, spot where we've had to have probably, I think you guys have hosted the most speed rails out of any venue we've had a chance to do this with. And one of the reasons that brought me over to FAO in the first place, because the bar was just ergonomically designed for a bartender to move fast within the service well. So not only could we get drinks to the people who are watching, but also the bartenders who are competing can make drinks as fast as possible. In fact, the fastest times in speed rails have been in this bar. They has 4 different walls of it, 6 different service wells, and I think it's really attributed to you guys being also a great event space, because events a lot of times are 2 to 3 hours. You guys are able to bring in 100, 200 people all at one time. Everybody gets their cocktails, as well as you guys have games to keep the interactive component going. And now with you guys also being on the 3rd floor, I think that's something that you guys have transitioned to as marketing yourselves as. Is that right?
Yes, that's definitely been our target going into 2024. Of course, you kind of get out of that honeymoon phase of the business, so you kind of have to make sure you really keep your options open. And one of the big things that we wanted to focus on going into 2024 was doing more events, getting more reservations and that type of aspect. And it's really benefited us to help do those things, because those groups obviously reach out to a different market, reach out to their clientele, so that just opens up a whole another window of people that come and see your space, which they're targeted only for 2 to 3 hours. But our goal is to make sure that we, give them the best experience so that they come back on their times off whenever they're not hosting an event, or even think of us for a different type of event. So that's really what we focus on.
I mean, when we first met, that was one of the things you always said, FAO's for everybody, but also we always just want people to see the space, see the space. Can you touch on your honeymoon phase, what you were just talking about right now?
Yeah.
And then was there a period of time where you started realizing people weren't seeing the space? Was that kind of correlated?
So for us, our honeymoon phase was definitely more unique, I think, because coming post-COVID, you had to get creative, and we were very fortunate enough to have someone do a viral video on TikTok. And then whenever we hit that happened, we started to see a number of people who, for whatever reason, Houston was labeled as a tourist-driven city at the time. One, probably because we were open, so it was a little bit more freedom coming through here. So you would really see a lot of the IDs that we would check were from out of state. They weren't even like they were from different areas of Houston or even throughout Texas. No, they were like from New York, Florida, California, Georgia, all different areas. So our big source of clientele was out of towners and people from out of state. So where we started to see somewhat of the drop off was obviously the nation started to open up more, so there's less travel. Of course, there's shifts in the market and different things, but we still had our regulars that were Houston based, but it was definitely a lot smaller market than we would like, being within actual entertainment district. So that was something that we said, okay, let's lean more heavy into catering to these people. And that's, we don't get me wrong, we were always focusing on doing that, but if you know Houston, there's different pockets and different neighborhoods to where people are really loyal to those things during those areas during trends. So don't get me wrong, we were always focused on maintaining happy hours and those things, but we was like, okay, now that needs to be the hyper focus of where we're at. Because with anything in business, you have to shift what we're doing. So us shifting into this part of saying, okay, now we really need to cater to the Houston market and seeing how can we get more people in here, and that's hosting events, because people are always looking for spaces to host events. And like you said, we cater to everybody, and the games are a big distraction to help loosen people's mindset and just loosen the environment, especially whenever you have corporate events or even just where there's a large space where not everyone knows each other. These are good icebreakers that allow people to interact with one another and then keep the conversations going, and then ultimately they just have a good time and have some quality drinks to match that. That's where we try to separate ourselves just from your standard bar in itself, So really leaning into the Houston market has been our big focus, and events has helped us do that.
The beginning part of that, where you said people were walking in, you're checking their IDs, and you're seeing them from different states and different places. And it's kind of crazy to be in a city as that transition happens, when you're like right next to downtown where these guys are located, and you're seeing that the population is starting to rotate out. And that does a lot of different things to the hospitality industry from my perspective. because a lot of these places, they're relying on their old clientele from 10, 15 years to keep them going, the same community, and that person telling 3 people, that 3 people telling 10 people.
Yeah.
But when you start having these inner cities where people are starting to travel for remote work now, so that means people are leaving Houston just as people are coming into Houston. Now people are also making their decisions where they go online with social media.
Yeah.
And so you guys were beneficial enough to have that viral video that popped off, which allowed you guys to tap into the information channel of how people decided where they went out. And then now you guys are also starting to lean into events. And that's one of the things I've always said, where, you know, there's marketing as a main umbrella. Social media is just one arm of it. You know, you got to do your outreach, which you guys are also really good at, making sure you guys are present at other places, other events where you get a chance to shake hands, meet new people, but then also throwing events to help raise awareness around your brand. I mean, at the end of the day, these events, these companies, they're throwing events to raise awareness about themselves. I mean, they will throw all their money at an event, not make anything, and lose thousands of dollars because of the long-term customer value. Now, with you guys transitioning into this new phase where you guys are not only hosting events, but you guys are also giving, you know, the people in the community a place for them to do business. So how has that been working for you guys to also be a place of ROI for people?
You know, whenever we work on like the partnerships and stuff like this, I think whenever they choose our space, our benefit and what we gain a little bit of leverage is that we're going to give them a great experience to where that alleviates some of the stress on the actual host and some things. And there's been a lot of times where some people just are a little bit more in awe of, you know, kind of what has happened, that their guests have had such a good time, to where that's a good reflection on them too. You know, last thing you want to do is host an event at a space to where, you know, something happens on the back end that's completely out of their control, but the people that are coming, you know, they don't really see all those things, you know, so that really is tied to your brand too, because if that's the case, then you have to kind of backpedal to kind of ease those people over in those senses, where if you come work with us, our goal is to make sure that we ease that tension and that stress, to where that ROI for you is that more people say, okay, I know I had a good time at that event that person hosted, to where if you do end up hosting it somewhere else, maybe they give you a little bit of a leeway to say, okay, maybe this was just a one-off. Maybe I'll just go make sure I go to the next one, because I remember that first one that they had at FAO, to where I had such a good time, to where I see that some of the the you know, hiccups that may have happened at this other space, they didn't really have it happen over here, to where that host is really good at what they do, and I can trust that they're going to lead us in the right direction for whatever they're doing.
And I think as an event planner myself, it's so refreshing to go to a venue that they are in line with making sure your event is pulled off successful versus just making sure everybody is buying drinks. Because I know a lot of times you'll go to a venue and people aren't buying drinks, and now everybody's unhappy, and then now the event is going down south and people are buying less drinks because of that.
Yeah.
But you guys are making sure that hospitality is right there, which I think a lot of times it puts us in a position in this industry on the venue side of being B2B sales too, where, you know, you are technically dealing with another community builder, and then you're having to like let them know that you're providing a service that helps them provide service.
Yep.
And that right there is an ROI in itself, and a lot of people need to leverage it more often. But now on the industry side of things, you know, you always talked about how Houston is changing and how a lot of places won't be making it from a success standpoint. And then you even noticing a trend of people not starting new businesses out of here because of them seeing the other failed businesses. Go ahead, just touch on that however you want to touch on it.
You know, I think that, I mean, this will always be a point of conversation, you know, businesses, you know, especially in the current time state of where we're at, you know, the struggle of it, it's no secret, you know, it's very hard. And not only are there going to be businesses closing in the near future, there have been a lot over this last year or 2 years, you know, ever since we got into it. And when we restarted our first business in 2019, you know, it's been an upward climb. So it's not easy by any means, but knowing the basics of it, to where you're weathering the storms, to where you're maybe not making all the profits that you maybe once were before, but you're still at least, you know, breaking even, to where you can at least get to that next phase, because it's tough for everyone right now, you know, out here, and it's not getting any cheaper too, to where, you know, we were very fortunate enough to have investors that were on board with what we got, investing in us, not necessarily the concept. You know, that's a rarity to have. So, but that was through a lot of legwork of being in the industry, to where we gained that respect, to where they trusted us to. Don't get me wrong, it was tough to kind of get out of that state, but, you know, I don't think a lot of people expect that going into the industry and, you know, these shifts, because especially in the hospitality industry, when we got a bad rep for, pre-COVID or during the COVID time period, it made it even harder to where it's a very sexy industry. But unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of prereqs that go into this whole thing. So it's very easy and very attractive for people to get into it. Whenever you kind of lose touch on, the trends and the transitions that are happening, because yes, one person may walk into a space and think that, oh, I can recreate this. Well, is that really what the area needs? Is that what the market needs? Yeah, it maybe seem like it's something that may be able to be pulled off, but I promise you, once you get this thing going, the operations aspect of things, it's a humbling industry. Not only, in the aspect of getting people in the door, but it'll really test your, stress levels, your family, your personal relationships on a whole lot of levels, because just because you open at 5 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m., that doesn't mean that things don't break before then that need to get done. And that's a reality that a lot of people don't take in consideration when actually owning a hospitality business, but a business in itself, So with the shifts in the markets and how much, Houston is, as far as like you have the Heights, you have Midtown, East Downtown, Washington, these areas all experience their ups and downs. And, some areas are a lot more attractive than others at some time periods, but unless you're really embedded in how the market is and just trends and how people work, and what really a neighborhood needs, you're only going to jump at that first opportunity for something like that, where I was saying, hey, you know what, maybe this isn't the right smart investment. And lack of a better way to put it, rent ain't cheap these days, so you really got to have those dollars not only to cover yourself, to cover rent, but also all the permits, your orders that need to take place. So those are a lot of things that people don't take in consideration, where you may got some bankroll, but even if you're a smart business person, even a smart business person knows, I'm not going to continue to let this just bleed myself dry, because then that's what I said, other aspects of your life start to get affected as well. And everyone's in this to make money. Don't get me wrong, I'm here to make money too, but sometimes I have to also understand that I'm not going to make as much money as I did last year, because just the times are different. The times have changed, and just in this period of where we're at, the neighborhood may have changed too, to where that's where you rely on all the basic knowledge that I've learned over me and my business partner over the 15 plus years to doing this, to say, okay, this is where we cut costs. This is where we we funnel more money into this aspect, because this will eventually make us more money, which is what we've done. The event kind of space concept is us pivoting and humbling ourselves to say, you know what, we don't have it figured out. We got to get more people in the door. How can we do that? Whether that's offering our space at discounted rates or partnerships, whatever that may be, it still has to make sense. I have to make it work for both parties, but we also know that we have to make these shifts in order for us to continue to be here in the coming years.
And in order to really take care of the neighborhood, you rely obviously on your staff, because you guys, are keeping this place together from a real estate perspective, but your staff, they are doing a lot of the, handshaking, and the baby kissing. How do you keep them involved in the longer vision? And then on top of that, what's the progression cycle needs to be in this industry? Because, every bartender wants to be a bar owner, and, a lot of bar owners want to open multiple concepts. Can you just touch on, I guess, how this whole ecosystem is working together?
Yeah, so like owners, we have to make sure we take a look in the mirror and know that we can't do it all. We have to build our team up. This is some humbling moments for myself. We're all in this for different reasons. Whenever you bring people on board, we really have to find out where they want to go and be realistic with them where we can get them to. There's, sometimes this industry can be, you kind of dangle the fruit a little bit, to where, I've heard many stories of people in those situations. So I've had to also look into how can we avoid this mindset from things, and also, help people understand that just because this is somewhat of it may seem like a playground, we're still running a business. So that's where we've made sure that we've adjusted some things, put together our full extensive training program, at least as far as like the blueprint of what we expect, really bridging that gap for our employees at the basic level, to understanding that We're here to do a job. We're all a part of a team. And there is a difference between a good bartender and a good employee. We got to make sure that we're still following through on the qualities of being a good employee to show your worth, to eventually be able to become a manager, to eventually become an owner, and all those different things, where no one's just going to hand this over. No one handed it over to me, so I'm not handing it over to anyone else.
It's even harder now.
And it is,
It's harder now.
So you got to really put forth your time and effort into everything that we're doing, and know that it's not overnight, because, like we said, just a little bit before, it's expensive. It's hard to make sure. So you got to make those connections in order to build your, base of financial gain to be able to help do this, and us as owners, and have to invest into the managers, to invest into, yes, the staff, because those are the ones that are putting out the product. Yes, me and my business partner, we're heavy on, us bartending all the time, but that won't get us to the next step of opening up other places. Sometimes we had to struggle with, sometimes the staff isn't necessarily delivering like we'd want them to. Well, we got to show them how to, and give them that freedom to be able to do these things. And that goes with us looking ourselves in the mirror and saying, okay, I got to put together the systems, all these different things. Yeah, you got to work a little bit more. But I promise you, in the long run, it does help out to where the systems are in play, to where we say, no, this is the expectations. Either you do it, or we're going to move on to the next person. And we have to remember, we have to maintain that mindset. And remember, this is not a playground. Yes, there's alcohol involved, but this is a business at the end of the day. We have to make sure we're following through on our duties of whenever you're supposed to get in this industry, which is hospitality, which is taking care of people, offering them a great space. It's not your own. It's not it can be a passion project, but the passion has to be into taking care of people. So you have to not do things that you want to do. No, it's what the consumer wants. And that's where we also had to restructure things on how we were delivering the cocktails. That's why we switched to draft cocktails. Yeah, we want to make sure we're putting out quality cocktails, but we can't rely on the staff to make all these drinks all the time, because this environment just isn't that. Our clientele is looking for a little bit more of the sweeter drinks. That's not our traditional cocktails, but observing the market, doing all the research, we know where we need to adjust and change things that we may see as personal preferences, but aren't really what the market is asking for.
And touching on your earlier point, nobody's giving you a bar anymore. You know what I'm saying?
No.
The bartender to bar owner pipeline, it's starting to dry up. And even in some cases, if you're a bartender, and this is what I've been watching, if you're a bartender, maybe getting a chance at bar ownership, you got to really evaluate the deal that you're walking into, because you might end up being in a spot where the real estate isn't prime location, which could set you up for fail, or you could end up being set up in a spot that's, from a real estate infrastructure standpoint, set you up for fail. So the air conditioning goes out, all these big costs that can make you run through your budget. I mean, I saw another bar that shut down within a few months just because the person they were releasing it from hadn't handled all their licenses. So they ended up blowing through $100,000, $150,000 of money just like that. So I think definitely recognizing, if you're a bartender, recognizing when you're within an ecosystem that, like, okay, I can build with these people. And if you aren't in one of those, you need to go find it. You go find it. And then I love that you talked about really putting those systems in place, because once again, that's one of the things that, as a guy, I've worked for nothing but really big corporate hospitality groups, and you kind of took it for granted when you get sat down for a 2-week orientation. They got video training modules, and that you walk in, they got another floor shifts where they kind of tell you where everything is labeled, bam, 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 they roll out a new menu, there's a whole day you sit down and learn this stuff, there are no fires. And so now you look at some of these smaller businesses, and you really have to do that yourself. And I know a lot of these.
It's not sexy to do, but we have to do that and invest into our businesses, because.
And that is the business.
Those are the things that keep us going, and all those things, because we have, as business owners, we have other things to worry about. Like you said, ACs, all these different things are breaking down to where you can't just take the shortcut to try and get these people through to where they're just on the floor. They're just helping you make money. Well, eventually they're going to lose you money, or you're going to waste time. Fortunately, we don't see the impact in what most, big businesses see, as far as like investing into an employee, and they know that they can see that this costs this amount of dollars for training, my time, even outsourcing to get the employee in the building. We don't see that in the bar business. You could just one person over, but that gets old. Like we need to make sure we're developing quality staff members that, unfortunately, you need a little bit of an extensive part of it So
I mean, but when you
figure
take
it
that
out.
approach into like wanting to develop them, then you take hiring so much more serious too. Because you
Absolutely.
know it's like, all right, I'm about to do this. I'm about to try to bond with
Yeah,
this
for
person. Let
sure.
me make sure this person is locked in too.
Absolutely. So I mean, and another thing too is it's not the sexy part of it either, but it's, I think it was Gary Vee says, we're never going to be good hires. We can ask all the questions that we want and work through some things, and but sometimes people just put up a facade. Sometimes they don't follow through. They they bite off more than they can chew. So we just got to be better firers, unfortunately. To maybe help us both out. Just cut that person off and let's move on to the next person, which is not, like I said, it's not sexy, but it's a part of the industry. And if you want to be here in 5-10 years, even in a year, especially with where we're at now, you got to be able to invest into the right people that want to be there to help you grow just as much as you want them to grow as well.
And you know what? Having those systems make it easier to move on to the next person, knowing that that process gets easier each time. At the same time, you want to make sure you're a good employee, stay happy by making sure they have good coworkers too. Because as you know, having toxic people around can deteriorate. But we can talk about this all day. Just wanted to get the ball rolling here. Adonis, Bronson, they have the AB Effect. They're also the owners of FAO. These guys are doing a lot of big things out here in Houston in developing these systems so that small businesses can start, onboarding, because the bar failure rate shouldn't be as big as it is. I think if you come into this and you start finding resources like the ones that you'll start seeing Speed Railz and these guys put out, then I think it'll start helping you out a lot. But Speed Railz, join the group chat, tap in with us.